The most important metabolic feature of HIV latent cells is downregulated glycolysis. And it makes sense. It makes sense. GCSPD is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. It activates the pentose phosphate pathway. When it activates the pentose phosphate pathway, the end product is NADPH. So those immune cells that are in latency, that contains the HIV reservoir, that makes HIV incurable, they are hiding in the immune cells, and they shifted their energy dependence no longer from glycolysis, which depends on NAD. They activate the GCSPD enzyme, activates the pentose phosphate pathway, and produces NADPH, and uses NADPH as a preferred source of energy. That's what explains why the cells don't die. That's what explains why the HIV infection remains incurable. And as long as those cells are latent, they cannot be targeted by the immune system. They cannot be targeted by the antiretroviral drugs. So if you want to cure HIV, if you want to eradicate the HIV virus, you have to look for a way to activate those cells, get them to actively start dividing, and then the immune system can pick up the viruses and attack them and eradicate them. So it is possible to eradicate the virus if you can solve the problem of latency. And the virus is smart. It suppresses NAD, and when it does, it frustrates glycolysis. If glycolysis is arrested, the cell goes into latency. And if the cell is latent, you cannot cure HIV infection. This makes sense. So that's why in one of the supplements we recommended, it is going to increase NAD levels. When you increase NAD levels, you restart glycolysis in those immune cells that are hiding the virus. And when you restart glycolysis, you expose the virus, you expose them from their hiding, and then they can be eradicated. Hello, this is Pure Health Revolution, and I welcome you to our Health Enlightenment series. Today, you are going to learn a lot about yourself. In our last presentation, we discussed HIV, understanding the problem, and it has generated a lot of reactions. And we're going to be discussing those reactions today, and then we will get further into discussing how to eradicate the virus. We will discuss why the virus has been incurable. We will talk about latency. You will see how the virus enters into some immune cells and hides. They are latent. They cannot be targeted. They cannot be eliminated. So if somebody can be on antiretroviral drugs to the point that it is completely suppressed, at that level, the person cannot transmit the virus. Even if it's a woman, if she gets pregnant, she will give birth to a child that is negative, and she cannot infect her husband. At the same time, she is still positive because those cells are in latency. If at any point she decides to stop taking her antiretroviral drugs, within 3 weeks, they will wake up out of latency and begin to rapidly multiply and reinfect her. We're going to explain the science behind that, and you will see the efforts that some pharmaceutical industries are making to design drugs that can shock the viruses out of latency and then expose them to the action of the immune cells and then the antiretroviral drugs. Now, our recommendation was very specific because the virus produces very specific needs at the level of the immune system. We recommended two supplements. One is to raise NAD levels, the other is to raise superoxide dismutase levels and then glutathione levels. Now, that our recommendation is not arbitrary. It's not just about boosting your immune system and all that. If it's to boost your immune system, I would have gladly recommended noni juice. This juice is fantastic. It is one supplement that has endured the highest level of clinical studies anywhere under the sun. I'm talking about a supplement that has endured more than 200 clinical trials. Even in Nigeria, even right here in this country, that's not an exaggeration. Let me show you this one. This paper was published in, I think, in 2006 by doctors at the University of Lagos College of Medicine. They studied the effect of noni juice on cervical spondylosis or arthritis of the back, and they discovered that the use of this supplement and as a complementary therapy to complement physiotherapy increases joint movement, it reduces pain and all that. So I can recommend this supplement for lower back pain, I can recommend it for arthritis, and I will not be making wild claims because that claim is backed by it's backed by a clinical study published in Nigerian Journal of Health and Biomedical Sciences. Again, concerning the immune system, this supplement has been studied on SARS-CoV-2. That's a virus that causes COVID-19, and it was published on ResearchGate. The reason I take time to show us these publications is so I will know that, first of all, I am not the one speaking. These are not my ideas. I'm showing us what scientists have said. Again, by showing us these publications, you realize that these claims are published on peer-reviewed journals. Before the journals allow this to be published, scientists, professors who are in the best position to question the science presented here have gone through it and have allowed it to be published on their journal. Therefore, the information presented here, to a reasonable extent, is reliable. So, this paper published by Brett West on the effect of noni juice on COVID-19, it shows that this supplement can inhibit SARS-CoV-2 spike proteins from binding to angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors. That means it can protect one from COVID-19 infection. It is not an empty claim. It is backed by a clinical study. But I have not seen, I don't know if it has been studied on the HIV virus. That's why I didn't recommend it for the HIV. But it boosts the immune system. If somebody is looking for a supplement that can boost the immune system, I recommend noni juice wholeheartedly. Now, I want to appreciate the doctors who enjoyed our first presentation. One of them who stand out is Dr. Ikechukwu, Dr. Ike in Umuahia, Abia State. He called me through my number on the screen. He blessed me. He prayed for me. He was so blessed by that presentation. Again, there some other doctors like that. I can't mention them all. There are doctors. There are pharmacists. There are also nurses who have called. I realized again that the doctors who took time to watch that presentation, they bought the supplements. In fact, those who bought the supplements from me, as in large numbers, were mostly doctors, mostly pharmacists and nurses. I noticed that they may not tell me they are doctors, but when I see the number of orders they are placing, I just ask them, are you a clinician? And every time I ask that question, I always got it right. So let me just say this: if you are somewhere in the far north, Katsina, Kano, Sokoto, and all that, and you're a nurse or you're the pharmacist, please do kindly make contact. We're looking for distributors up there, those so that we can know where to direct people to go and pick the products instead of doing way bill all the way to far north. And if you make contact, I will also show you how to make profit from selling the supplements. Fantastic value chain built around this. Now, not all the doctors that called were happy with that presentation. Some doctors called and they expressed their displeasure. Two among them stand out. I don't know if one is a professor, but he looks very scholarly. He had white hairs. He chatted me up on WhatsApp, and then he called. From his display, from his profile picture, he looks like a professor. He's very scholarly. Of course, if you know somebody who is seriously into the academic community, you should know. White hair, brought his glasses here on his profile picture. So he asked a number of questions. I kept answering, and he kept bombarding me with questions. I knew if I give him time, he's going to corner me and wants to prove to me that I of course that I didn't know enough, and I had to throw a few punches at him. That's my way of fighting back and protecting myself. If you had watched the previous video, I discussed unboxing. So that's one of the strategies in boxing. When somebody begins to corner you, you either throw a jab or you give him some body shots to slow him down. I said, "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir." I said, "Excuse me, sir. Let me ask you a question." I asked him, "What is the difference between humans and chimpanzees? Why is it that if humans get infected with the HIV virus, our immune system is weakened over time, and over time we get sick? Why does it not happen to chimpanzees?" That, for me, is a trap. If he answers that question, he's already in the middle of the supplement that I recommended. He didn't like the supplements I recommended. He was very antagonistic. But if he answered that question, if he ever said the difference between humans and chimpanzees, he's already in the middle of supplements I recommended, and I will throw the knockout punch by asking him, "Then why are you against the supplements?" So I think he saw, of course, he's smart. He saw the danger, and then he said, "I was not." He refused to answer the call, and then he ended the call. I've called him a few times. He refused to pick, and I still wish to call him again so we can continue the conversation. The next person who called, he said he's a professor of virology, as in he's a professor in the study of viruses, and he asked questions. He kept asking questions, and then I had to also throw some punches to slow him down. I asked him if he knows any therapeutic agent or any drug that can successfully address the issue of latency. Because if you solve the problem of latency in HIV infection, you have cured the virus, the virus infection. You have eradicated the virus. So the problem of HIV is the why it has remained incurable is latency. When I asked him that was the end of the conversation. So I'm going to answer these two questions in the course of this presentation. I will show us why chimpanzees don't get sick when they contract the virus, and also I will discuss very extensively the issue of latency. Now I want to talk about some patients who were happy with the presentation, and they were very emphatic that their doctor told them not to take any supplements whatsoever. Now, that did not start today. It didn't start today. It is as old as we can remember. Some doctors always oppose nutritional supplements as a complementary therapy. Please mark that. I do not recommend supplements on this platform. Pure Health Revolution, we don't advocate for alternative therapy where people are encouraged to stop taking their drugs and focus only on nutritional supplements. We are recommending a complementary therapy, that the best way drugs can work better is to complement the effort of the drugs with nutritional supplements. Some doctors don't accept that, and I'm going to show you the emptiness of that statement. First of all, in the 1920s and 1930s, an American doctor, Dr. Charles Nodin, had a very crazy idea. His idea is that some of the chronic diseases that Americans were suffering at the time, and even till now, by extension, we can say that till now, is as a result of mineral and nutritional deficiency. So he predicted that if minerals were put back in the soil, so that plants planted on such soils can grab those minerals when humans feed on them, that it can serve to correct nutrition deficiencies, and then the diseases can be reversed. Doctor said he was mad. He went ahead with the experiment. After harvesting the plant, the fruits and vegetables planted on such soils, he used it on his patients, and the result was a miracle. So in 1936, the US Senate wrote an article entitled Modern Miracle Men. This is an article published by Congress in 1936. And I'm going to read some excerpts for us, for those doctors who don't accept nutritional supplements, or who assume that we get nutrients by default. That as long as you eat fruit and vegetables, you are fine. You don't need a supplement. That statement is empty, and you're going to see it just now. This is Modern Miracle Men, an article published by Congress in 1936. They said, do you know that most of us today are suffering from certain dangerous diet deficiencies which cannot be remedied until the depleted soils from which our foods come are brought into proper mineral balance? Again, they said, you would think, wouldn't you, that a carrot is a carrot? Did you see that? You would think, wouldn't you, that a carrot is a carrot? That one is about as good as another as far as nourishment is concerned. But it isn't. It is not. A carrot is not a carrot. One carrot may look and taste like another, and yet be lacking in the particular mineral element which our system requires and which carrots are supposed to contain. Laboratory tests prove that the fruits, the vegetables, the grains, the eggs, and even the milk and the meats of today are not what they were a few generations ago. 1936, US Senate was telling Americans that the foods we have today are not what they were a few generations ago. It is the same thing here. Don't worry. Let's continue. But just bear in mind that a carrot is not a carrot. The doctor might look at the agricultural literature and see that the soil scientist said a carrot contains this, it contains this, it contains all these minerals. So the doctor might now go and tell his patients, eat carrot, eat this, eat the other one. But a carrot is not a carrot. A carrot planted here and the one planted in another state, they are not the same in terms of mineral content. Let's continue. The last paragraph here said, it is bad news to learn from our leading authorities that 99% of American people are deficient in these minerals, and that a marked deficiency in any one of the more important minerals actually results in disease. Deficiency results in diseases. Any upset of the balance, any considerable lack of one or another element, however microscopic the body requirement may be, and we sicken, and we suffer, and we shorten our lives. 1936, American Congress. That no matter how microscopic the body's requirement of that element might be, if we are not getting them, it could make us sicken, it could make us suffer, it could make us shorten our lives. The Senate published this in 1936 to offer support to Dr. Charles Norton, who was ridiculed by fellow doctors simply because he recommended nutritional supplements. The Senate called him Modern Miracle Men. There's a kind of miracle you may never enjoy if you are not allowed to combine your pharmaceutical drugs with nutritional supplements. Again, in 1978, Professor A.G. Lombin of Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria did a comparative study of soil samples across Nigeria. He published the paper on Nigerian Soil Science and Plant Nutritional Journal. It's entitled Evaluation of the Magnesium Supplying Powers of the Nigerian Savannah Soils. This study is on magnesium, one of the essential minerals that are very important to our life and well-being. He discovered that our soils at that time, 1978, was already becoming mineral deficient. And he said that fertilizer was coming. That when you apply fertilizer to a soil, you will suffer, you will distort the potassium magnesium cation exchange. That you will favor the preferential absorption of potassium, and magnesium absorption will suffer. And when that means for fruit and vegetables planted with fertilizer, they are low on magnesium. I will discuss the significance of this when I discuss high blood pressure and diabetes. So when a healthcare professional, either a doctor, nurse, pharmacist, tell you to leave nutrition supplements and focus only on your drugs and fruit and vegetables, you have to ask him, fruit and vegetables cultivated where? Our ancestors planted they cultivated their farms, and they allowed this for up to 4 or 7 years and allowed the soil to rebuild its nutrient density and organic matter before they cultivated again. Fruit and vegetables planted on such soils and the one you plant on the soil we cultivate every year, they are not the same in terms of nutritional content. Therefore, you have to supplement. President Bill Clinton signed a bill of Congress into law on the 25th of October 1994. It was entitled Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. It's about nutritional supplements. Let me just read a few excerpts and then we get back into HIV. U.S. Public Law is entitled U.S. Public Law 103-417. Section 2 dealt with the findings of Congress. Section 2, subsection 1 says that Congress finds that the health of Americans is top priority of the U.S. government. We're not interested in that one. The second one, subsection 2 says Congress finds that the importance of nutrition and the benefits of dietary supplements to health promotion and disease prevention have been documented increasingly in scientific studies. Did you hear that? American Senate is saying that the importance of nutrition and the benefits of dietary supplements to health promotion and disease prevention have been documented increasingly in scientific studies. Scientific studies. And your healthcare professional, maybe your doctor or pharmacist, say supplement. No. It has been documented increasingly in scientific studies. Let me show us 7 and 8 and then we leave. 7 and 8 will explain what I'm doing now. 7 said, Congress finds that there is a growing need for emphasis on the dissemination of information linking nutrition and long-term good health. Nutrition and long-term good health. The information should be disseminated. They found the need. In conclusion, they said, Congress finds that consumers should be empowered to make choices about preventive healthcare programs based on data from scientific studies of health benefits related to particular dietary supplements. Congress is saying that consumers should be empowered with information from scientific studies so that you can be able to make choices about the health benefits you can get from nutritional supplements. If you don't know what discoveries scientists have made, you may not make important choices about your health. I want to talk about a man, a professor, and this should make you get concerned each time either a doctor or pharmacist or any healthcare provider speaks against nutritional supplements. I want to introduce you to a man, Professor Robert Keller. In terms of success as a medical doctor, he got to the zenith of clinical practice. Professor Keller qualified as a medical doctor in 1970, and he has achieved whatever any doctor can ever achieve. In academic medicine, he got to the level of a professor of oncology. He was voted among the 2,000 most distinguished scientists of the 21st century. Hear that again. Professor Keller was voted among the 2,000 most distinguished scientists of the 21st century. He is on the review board of the U.S. National Institute of Health. That's for Nigeria. We have the Federal Ministry of Health. In the U.S., they have National Institute of Health. Professor Keller is among the leadership of the U.S. National Institute of Health. Again, he is a consultant for GlaxoSmithKline for GSK, which GlaxoSmithKline is about the biggest pharmaceutical industries in the world, one of the biggest. He is a consultant to GSK. He's also a consultant to Biosource Therapeutics, which is a company that produces antiretroviral drugs for HIV patients. He is a consultant. For 2002, 2003, and 2004, Professor Keller was voted among the 10 best doctors in the US in hematology, in immunology, and also in oncology. That's the field of medicine that discusses the diseases of the blood, on the immune system, and also on cancer. He is among the top 10 best doctors in the US for 2002, 2003, and 2004. But he's going to make a confession. I'm going to play a video for you now, just 40 seconds. And you will hear him tell you that for all these years in clinical practice, he didn't know about glutathione. He didn't know. In fact, if I didn't see this video, I wouldn't have believed it is ever possible. Please listen to Professor Robert Keller.
And I have to tell you that I am on the Speakers Bureau for GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and also a nutritional consultant for an HIV nutritional company named Biosource Therapeutics, which has nothing to do with what I'm talking about today. What I'd like to talk to you about is something that I find thoroughly fascinating. It is glutathione. It is one of the 4 endogenous antioxidants, and it is one that I must admit, despite 80,000 published articles in the English literature, through medical school, internship, residency, fellowship, and a fairly long time in academic medicine, I knew nothing about.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? He did not know about nutritional supplements. So, if you had met Professor Keller at that time before his enlightenment, and you ask him a question about nutritional supplements, he, as a professor of oncology who manages people who have cancer, will quickly dismiss supplements, or dismiss a supplement that contains glutathione, and you will think he is dismissing this supplement simply because of how much he knows. You will know that judgment he made was drawn from what he does not know. So sometimes when somebody talks against nutrition supplements, the person is only advertising his ignorance. Can I tell you what happened to Professor Keller after his enlightenment? What he did? He began a company that produces nutritional supplements, especially glutathione, because he knows what it can do for a HIV patient. I can send you some of the videos if you so wish. So anybody who talks against nutritional supplements, who does not accept it on the basis of a complementary therapy to complement the effort of the drugs, that's a red flag. That advice comes from the pit of hell. That advice will put you in harm's way. That advice can complicate your condition simply because you are not addressing some of the needs of the body. Instead, you take drugs and more chemicals and more drugs every single day. Please, always bear in mind that your healthcare provider is a human. Your doctor is a human. Your pharmacist is a human. The nurse managing your condition is also a human. They could make mistakes. Sometimes they could speak against nutrition supplements, and it's not exactly because of how much they know. It could be based on what they don't know. The doctor is not a soil scientist. Let me show us these screenshots. Of course, you heard Professor Keller said that there were 80,000 published works on glutathione as at the time he was discussing it. 80,000. So he needed 80,000 publications on this molecule to convince him that it is real, and that supplementing on this molecule is in the interest of the patient. 80,000 changed his view. Look at this. In March of 2022, I searched PubMed, which is owned by American Federal Ministry of Health, PubMed, or US National Institute of Health. When I searched glutathione, I saw about 163,831 results. So at the time that Professor Keller got enlightened on this subject, there were 80,000. By 2022, there were 163,831 papers published on this subject alone. Look at, I checked this month, this September 2023, there are now 178,547,000 results on this subject alone. So in just 1 year and 6 months, from March of 2022 to September 2023, it has moved from 163,000 studies to 178,000 studies. About 15,000 publications already on this subject. To show you, that's where scientists are now looking at for answers. Now again, look at this on superoxide dismutase, this enzyme. March of 2022, I did this search on PubMed, and I had 92,150 studies published on PubMed on this subject. This September of 2023, I searched and I saw 102,761 results on this subject alone. So in one year and 6 months, on this subject alone, there are already more than 10,000 studies published on PubMed. Scientists are making research, making publications on these studies, and then somebody in your own corner is telling you, supplement, don't buy. It will interfere with your medications. Don't buy. And you think the person is doing you any good. So this is where Pure Health Revolution stands in the middle of the road to point you in the right direction. What we are doing, is to make sure that we will separate the wheat from the chaff. It is not every supplement that should be taken. Some of them have very bogus claims that they don't meet. But what we are doing here is to use science to show you the kind of supplement you should take or allow into your body. Now, I want to show us these two publications from the University of Lagos College of Medicine. These studies were done in Nigeria. In case your doctor has told you supplements don't take, look at what other doctors have discovered. This paper was published in 2012 and is entitled Investigation of the Levels of Oxidative Stress Parameters in HIV and HIV Tuberculosis Co-infected Patients. Oxidative stress is all that we've discussed here. If you had watched the first video, it's all explained. Look at their conclusion. This paper was published by Dr. Awodele and others. Look at what this is their conclusion. They said it may be advisable to always incorporate exogenous antioxidants in the regimen of HIV and HIV tuberculosis co-infected patients. Exogenous antioxidants is only a baptismal name for nutritional supplements. That's it. That's it. Look at this other paper. Much more interesting as well. Published by Dr. Popola and others. Also from University of Lagos College of Medicine. It's entitled The Interplay Between Antiretroviral Therapy and Oxidative Stress in HIV Seropositive Patients. That's people who are living with HIV. Remember that we said that oxidative stress is all that we've discussed here. If you had watched the first video, you already know about oxidative stress by now. And then this paper, they show that even the antiretroviral drugs produces oxidative stress. These are actual screenshots from the paper. He said, however, the induction of oxidative stress by antiretroviral therapy is minimal compared to HIV induction of oxidative stress in the host. The use of antiretroviral drugs in the management of HIV/AIDS thus remains inevitable. And the combination with exogenous antioxidants is advocated. This is a study published in Nigeria by our doctors at the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. They said that the antiretroviral drugs that you are given produces oxidative stress. That means there are damages at the level of the cells that are induced or caused by the antiretroviral drugs. But they said, however, it is minimal compared to the damage caused by the HIV virus. They said, one, that the use of antiretroviral drugs, HAART, is highly active antiretroviral therapy. They said the use of antiretroviral drugs in the management of HIV is inevitable. So you must stay on your antiretroviral drugs. But they said, but the combination with exogenous antioxidants, which is a baptismal word for nutritional supplements, is advocated. See, there is no doctor who has done the research who will tell you not to take nutritional supplements as a complementary therapy. None. So anybody who talks against it is saying so from what he doesn't know, not from what he knows. In conclusion, they said exogenous antioxidants, they mop up infection in induced reactive oxygen species and may also be beneficial in ameliorating some of the adverse effects induced by the antiretroviral drugs. Did you see that? So they said that the right kind of nutritional supplements can mop up these free radicals, and then it can also help to reduce some of the damages that are done by the antiretroviral drugs. So we have to zoom off at this time and talk about HIV latency. Now, look at this paper. It said HIV infection decreases intracellular nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, that is NAD. So that's the paper that showed that the HIV virus, it suppresses NAD. So what happens when NAD is suppressed? We discussed it extensively in the first video. Now, at the beginning, I talked about latency. The virus exists in two states in the body: when it is active or when it is inactive. The more correct word is when it is potent, when it is rapidly dividing, and when it is latent. It is either potent or it is latent. When it is potent is when the virus is awake, it is active, it is rapidly dividing. When it is latent is when it is sleeping. The virus, the HIV virus, divides itself in the body, and some of it enters into some immune cells and forms a HIV reservoir. And those ones can stay there for ages, for several years, and they are waiting for the person to stop taking the antiretroviral drugs. But as long as they are latent in those immune cells, they cannot be targeted by both our immune system and also the antiretroviral drugs. So you can take the antiretroviral drugs for a long time. You can achieve viral suppression. At that point, the person cannot transmit them, cannot pass it on to an unborn child. But the virus, they are still there. The ones that are latent are waiting for the person to stop taking the antiretroviral drugs. Then they will begin to multiply after about 3 weeks or more, and then they will re-infect the person. Let me show you this paper. It said a latent HIV reservoir is a group of immune system cells in the body that are infected with the HIV but are not actively producing new HIV cells. Finding ways to target and destroy latent reservoirs is a major challenge facing HIV researchers who are exploring different strategies for clearing out the reservoir. So scientists are engaged in the business of discovering new drugs that can help to clear out the viral reservoir. Now, a few mechanisms have been discovered to explain latency. How do they enter into those cells and the cells become latent? It becomes inactive. It's not rapidly dividing. I'm going to say things now that you may not understand if you are not if you don't have a basic training in sciences. But please don't be offended. It is for your own good. There are doctors who are watching this and scientists who are watching this who might benefit from what I'm going to be saying now. But just know that I'm working in your favor. We are still on the same team. Don't be offended. Now, some mechanisms have been identified, like purines and pyrimidine ribonucleotide intermediates. One paper said that the virus suppresses those intermediates, and when the purines and the pyrimidine ribonucleotide intermediates are less, that the cell does not complete its cycle, therefore the cell enters into latency. Now, some studies have discovered some basic information about those immune cells that are hiding the latent HIV reservoir. They said that the characteristic feature, that the most important metabolic feature of HIV latent cells is down-regulated glycolysis. And it makes sense. It makes sense. Because if you down-regulate the production of NAD, it's going to affect glycolysis. You know about glycolysis, sorry for the bogus word. Glycolysis is just how the body breaks down glucose to produce energy. That's all. And NAD is at the middle of glycolysis. So once you suppress NAD, glycolysis is compromised. Then the next question is, how does the cell survive? What is their source of energy? Because if you suppress glycolysis, the cell is supposed to die. So a few other publications, sorry, I won't be showing all those publications. Every doctor who is interested in this information can go and read. So some of those information you have to pay for them. So some of those papers, like as recent as 2020, 2021, might ask you to subscribe to the journal. $120, $110, $79, and all that. It is their intellectual property. So if they ask you to pay, please pay. But I am not speaking for myself. I am representing authorities. The publications that I have been privileged to come across. So I am not speaking by myself. I don't have the capacity to discover these mechanisms. I'm quoting authorities. So they discovered that once NAD is suppressed, once the purines and pyrimidine ribonucleotide intermediates have been suppressed and the cell enters into latency, there is a shift. An enzyme is activated. G6PD. I don't want to call the name, but the way you are looking at me, you are going to make me call it. And I know you don't like the name. You that is looking at me from the screen. G6PD is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. It activates the pentose phosphate pathway. When it activates the pentose phosphate pathway, the end product is NADPH. So those immune cells that are in latency, that contains the HIV reservoir, that makes HIV incurable, they are hiding in the immune cells, and they shifted their energy dependence no longer from glycolysis, which depends on NAD. They activate the G6PD enzyme, activates the pentose phosphate pathway, and produces NADPH, and uses NADPH as their preferred source of energy. That's what explains why the cells don't die. That's what explains why the HIV infection remains incurable. And as long as those cells are latent, they cannot be targeted by the immune system. They cannot be targeted by the antiretroviral drugs. So if you want to cure HIV, if you want to eradicate the HIV virus, you have to look for a way to activate those cells, get them to actively start dividing, and then the immune system can pick up the viruses and attack them and eradicate them. So it is possible to eradicate the virus if you can solve the problem of latency. Some drugs have been designed to do that. There are drugs like histone deacetylase inhibitors. There are drugs like histone methyltransferase inhibitors, like ketosine, and also BIX01294. These are methyltransferase inhibitors. Ketosine is an anti-tumor antibiotics, but it also is capable of doing a job by way of activating the latent HIV reservoirs. There are also some bromodomain inhibitors. There are some specific cytokines, and particularly the most successful one I should say are the PKC agonists. PKC. Oh, sorry. The PKC agonists, and the most popular among them is bryostatins. It's able to activate the cells, and the cells will help to complete the purine metabolism, and then activate the cells out of latency. But they also have their problems, particularly this PKC, bryostatins, which is most successful in activating the latent cells. One of its side effects is mitochondrial dysfunction. What I'm trying to say is that scientists are exploring these drugs as a way of solving the problem of latency. If you can activate those latent cells, then they can get active and expose the viruses that are hiding inside of them, and then the immune cells and the antiretroviral drugs can attack those cells and eradicate them. These drugs, there are hopes that these drugs can do that, but PKC agonists like bryostatins, they have very serious side effects. One of them is mitochondrial dysfunction, and any drug that can cause mitochondrial dysfunction is terrible. It's not the long-term effect will be devastating. So you solve one problem and then you create another. But in the midst of all this, ask yourself again, what can you do to restore glycolysis in that cell? It is NAD. That's simple biology. Every science student knows that. There is no glycolysis without NAD. And the virus is smart. It suppresses NAD. And when it does, it frustrates glycolysis. If glycolysis is arrested, the cell goes into latency. And if the cell is latent, you cannot cure HIV infection. Makes sense. So that's why in one of the supplements we recommended, it is going to increase NAD levels. When you increase NAD levels, you restart glycolysis in those immune cells that are hiding the virus. And when you restart glycolysis, you expose the virus, you expose them from their hiding, and then they can be eradicated. There are 3 cases that are verified in which the virus has been cured. And the first 2 are stem cell therapies. Stem cell. One of them is the London patient. Okay, this is the Berlin patient, the German in Berlin, in Germany. And then the next one is the London patient. These 2 became HIV free several years after, simply because of a stem cell therapy. The third testimony were the Brazilians. A Brazilian man who was HIV positive did what I'm describing now. In fact, there's a paper published published on Brazilian Journal of Infectious Diseases. They used a precursor, a building block of NAD, raised NAD levels up in the patient, and the man became negative after a few months. They published it during an international HIV conference in Brazil in the July of 2020, during the pandemic. It was an online virtual conference, and they shared the testimony. This is the lead scientist in the University of Sao Paulo who led the study. So these are not empty claims. If you restore glycolysis by way of increasing NAD levels, you can solve the problem of latency. If you solve the problem of latency, you can eradicate the virus. So let me just read this. They said a man in Sao Paulo who has no evidence of remaining HIV after more than 15 months of antiretrovirals, at least according to tests done so far, may represent the first case of a functional cure without the risks of a stem cell transplant, according to a report presented today at the 23rd International AIDS Conference in Brazil in 2020. So that's it. So this paper explains the difference between humans and chimpanzees. Chimpanzees, when they're infected with the virus, their immune system does not allow the virus to enforce oxidative stress within the mitochondria. So it does not succeed in suppressing their own SOD. That's the question I asked the man who called me. This is glutathione, and it's the molecule of life. Look at this paper. They said cysteine and glutathione deficiency in AIDS patients, a rationale for the treatment with N-acetylcysteine. Look at what they are saying. They identified that glutathione and its building block is cysteine. They are low in the body of all HIV patients because the virus consciously suppresses GSH and its building block, which is cysteine. And this paper said that because glutathione is suppressed among HIV patients, it's a rationale to treat HIV patients with NAC. NAC is N-acetylcysteine. Why treat with this? Why not this? The reason is because at the time they were discussing it, you cannot introduce glutathione directly into the body because an enzyme, first of all, you can't introduce it orally. If you do, the acid in the stomach is going to break it down to its building blocks. And if you give it by way of infusion, by way of injection, an enzyme called GGT is going to oxidize it from this bioactive form to its disulfide and non-bioactive form. In this form, the body cannot use it. So the scientists could not produce this in its bioactive form, where you can introduce it directly into the body and it will be active. So you have to depend on NAC. But that problem has been solved in the supplements I recommend. I'm giving this to you in its bioactive form. So in general, the supplements we recommended will, since the virus suppresses NAD, suppresses SOD and GSH, it's not about supplementing arbitrarily. Let's supplement along these three lines and knock the virus out. That's all. That's all we recommended. This is Barrister John Enako, former SOG president of former Students Union Government President, University of Calabar. He once told me a story which his father told him. He told me his dad told him about Zuma Rock in Abuja. In fact, that's why it was later called Zuma Rock. Many years ago, it was once announced that the heavens were going to collapse over Abuja. So there was pandemonium. People were running helter-skelter, and a little chick called Zuma heard it and asked, "What's happening?" So it was told that the heavens were going to collapse. So it ran to the top of Zuma Rock, lay itself down, and raised its two legs up. Little chick, what do you think you are doing? People saw it and asked, what do you think you are doing? He told them that, have you not heard that the heavens are going to collapse? They said, we've heard. Because if it's going to collapse, is it these your tiny legs that will stop it from collapsing? It responded that, I know that my tiny legs are too small to stop the heavens from collapsing. But I want to do whatever I can to make sure that in the end, when the story will be told that it was once announced that the heavens were going to collapse, let it not also be said that the little chick heard it and didn't do anything. You have heard a lot about the HIV. We have discussed the science behind the latency. You have seen that the virus suppresses three important pillars of the immune system. And we said If you solve the problem of latency, you can expose the viruses out of their reservoir and expose them to the action of the immune system and the antiretroviral drugs. It is possible to knock the virus out. Please do whatever you can today to make sure that in the future, when the story shall be told that it was once announced that it is possible to knock the virus out, let it not also be said that you heard all this and you didn't do anything.